Hey there friends, it's Nick. Right, so let's talk about the insane value of failure. So one of the things we talk about in the story structure is character, conflict, consequence. So that's the basic kind of 3 points of the triangle. But if you've seen the video about the slightly more advanced version of that, you'll know that it actually goes character, trigger, conflict, insight, consequence, change. And that's because the change often leads to the character changing, new trigger, new conflict, and we go round and round around the triangle. And that's what happens in typically in movies and stories. You know, you've got very often at the start of a story, you've got a character who wants to achieve a thing. And, you know, in the hero's journey, they leave home, metaphorically or otherwise, they leave home and they battle various kind of monsters and what have you. And that's what we see in stories. We see the constant trying and failing. And you know, one of the key ideas is that in good stories, in stories that resonate, the character at the start is lacking something. They are lacking it might be a piece of knowledge or an insight or something, something deep inside them, a kind of psychological need, and they can't complete the story. They can't complete the quest until they have recognised that need, that gap, and filled it. So failure is really important. I mean, obviously it's important in life as well. If we're not prepared to fail at something, we're not going to get any good at it, obviously. And that applies equally to putting video channel on YouTube. One might say, you have to get it wrong to get it right, or doing the podcast in the afternoon, obviously storyhacker.tv, search in your favourite podcast app, but anything really. And I think from a business point of view, the value of this is that we need to have failure in our stories. We need to have times when the conflict overwhelmed us, because otherwise I think your stories aren't credible, right? So, I mean, when I was running the agency, we had many, many stories of failure because one of our things was to try new stuff and push. So sometimes it might have been a kind of usability test or a kind of conversion test, the amount of those we tried where we didn't get the result we want. But it's a bit like, it's one of those kind of, one of those classic sort of sales techniques, isn't it? Is you have to tell your prospect one of the negatives. And yes, hopefully it's a negative that won't matter to them, but it builds credibility in the rest of your pitch. And okay, so maybe that's a little bit cynical, but the point is, if you can show circumstances where you failed, I think it shows character, particularly if, as in the hero's journey, or most of the stories we see, eventually the hero, the protagonist, will overcome a particular obstacle. And I think conversion testing is a good example of that in website development, where you're looking for the thing that will increase the page conversion, and you get it wrong, but you keep trying, and in the end you get there. And I think having a failure story is a really good thing to have in your quiver for when your prospects ask a hard question, because we need to have authentic answers to those kind of things. Anyway, that's it for me today. See you in another video.